Hello everybody, Jade Hamilton here, and today I have got Miss Joni-Marie with me, as promised. She's very unseen because she's this beautiful, bright teal blue, edged with white, and she's also got a beautiful blue outfit on. That's the advantage. She fell out of the sling, so I'm having to go old school today and carry her around in my arms, which may or may not work, we'll see, but I hope that you can see, if I come back a bit, she's got a beautiful sort of mid-blue ribbed vest on, and she's also got the second pair of that twin pack of yoga pants that I mentioned. They've got beautiful baby blue and cobalt blue and very pale buttery yellow flowers all over them. And she's got her little bib with flowers, and I think they might be butterflies or birds, I can't really see, but all dressed up and ready to meet you. And since I'm cuddling her, I thought I'd read from one of the ebook books that I've got saved on my laptop today. I'm reading again from Judy Blume's Tales of Fourth Grade Nothing. Obviously, as with all my reading videos, all rights go to Judy Blume and to her publisher, which is Macmillan. I own absolutely nothing, and this is for entertainment only. So sit back, sit yourself down with a hot drink if you've got one, and enjoy. This story follows directly on from the birth. I think it follows on from the birthday bash, or either it's just before or just after. But it's called Fang Hits Town. Oh yes, it's directly after the birthday bash because it talks about Fudge's new bed. Fudge liked his new bed a lot. There was just one problem. He fell out of it every night. By the fourth night, my mother and father got smart. They pushed the bed against the wall and surrounded the other side with chairs. Now there was no place for Fudge to fall. But every morning my mother found him curled up in one of the chairs. My father said they could have saved their money, since Fudge was so happy sleeping in an old chair. On Saturday we had to go to the dentist. He wanted to check Fudge's mouth again, to make sure everything healed all right since his flying experience. Dr. Brown is an old friend of my father's. They went to college together. They went to school together, sorry. He's always saying he takes special care of me and Fudge because we're chips off the old block. The old block being my father. His office is on the other side of the park. It's near Madison Avenue. My mother said we'd make a day of it. And wouldn't that be fun? I'd rather go to the movies with Jimmy Fargo, I told her. But we'll have such a good time, my mother said. The three of us will go out for lunch and then we'll get new shoes for you and Fudge. I've been out to lunch with Fudge, I reminded her. He's growing up, Peter. He knows how to behave now. I'd still rather go to the movies with Jimmy. Well, you're coming with me, and that's that. I wasn't looking forward to my day, and Saturday is always the best day of the week. Every Saturday morning, I clean out Dribble's bowl. Sometimes, if Fudge is very good, I let him watch. I do it in the bathroom. First, I take Dribble out of his bowl and let him crawl around in the bath. I'm afraid to put him down on the floor. Somebody might step on him. But in the bath, I know he's safe. Next, I take the rocks out of his bowl and wash them. The last thing I do is wash the bowl itself. I really scrub it. I even rinse it 2 or 3 times to make sure all the soap is out. When I'm done with that, I put the rocks back in and fill it with just the right amount of water. After I put Dribble back in his bowl, I feed him. Usually, he goes right to sleep on his favourite rock. I guess running around in the bathtub makes my turtle tired. Today I finished with Dribble just in time. My mother was rushing, mumbling about getting us to Dr. Brown's office in time for our appointment. When we were outside, we took the crosstown bus and walked a few blocks to his office. As soon as the nurse saw Fudge, she said, "How's my favourite patient?" She gave him a hug and a little book to read. To me, she said, "Good morning, Peter." It burns me up, the way people treat Fudge. He's not so special. He's just little, that's all. But someday he's going to be 9 years old too. I can't wait until he is. Then he'll know there's nothing so great about him after all. Soon the nurse said, "Fudge, Dr. Brown is ready for you. Come with me now." Fudge took the nurse's hand. Dr. Brown has this rule about mothers in the examining room with kids. They're not allowed. Mothers are a big problem, Dr. Brown told me once. I agreed. I looked through a National Geographic magazine while I waited. After a few minutes, the nurse came out and whispered something to my mother. I looked up, wondering what the big secret was. Then my mother said, "Peter, Dr. Brown would like you to help him with Fudge." "Help him?" I said. "I'm no dentist." The nurse said, "Peter, dear, if you'll just come with me, I'm sure everything will work out fine." So I went with the nurse. "What do I have to do?" I asked her. "Oh, not much. Dr. Brown just wants to show Fudge how you open your mouth and how he checks your teeth." "What do I have to do that for?" I asked. "I don't need a checkup yet. I just had one last month." "Your brother won't open his mouth this morning," the nurse whispered. "He won't?" I whispered back. "No, he won't," she said again. I thought that was pretty funny. I'd never considered refusing to open my mouth at the dentist's office. When he says open, I open. When we reached the examining room, Fudge was sitting in the big chair. He had a towel around his neck and he looked all ready for action. Dr. Brown was showing him lots of little things and explaining what he does with each one. Fudge kept nodding, but he wouldn't open his mouth. "Ah, Peter," Dr. Brown said when he saw me. "Would you open your mouth so I can count your teeth?" That's what he tells little kids he's doing, counting their teeth. Little kids will believe anything. I went along with Dr. Brown's joke. I opened my mouth very wide, much wider than when I'm the real patient. He put his mirror in and said, "Wonderful teeth. A regular chip off the old block. Such a shame your brother can't open his mouth the way you do." "Can so?" Fudge said. "No," Dr. Brown told him. "You can't open your mouth nearly as good as Peter. Can so. See?" Fudge opened his mouth. "No, I'm sorry, Fudge," Dr. Brown said. "It's still not as good as Peter." So Fudge opened his mouth really wide. "Count teeth," he said. "Count Fudgy's teeth." "Well," Dr. Brown pretended to think about it. "Count!" Fudge shouted. "Well," Dr. Brown said, again scratching his head, "I guess as long as you're here, I might as well count your teeth." So he checked Fudge's mouth. When he was through, Fudge said, "See, see, just like Peter." "Yes," Dr. Brown said, smiling, "I can see that. You're just like Peter." He gave me a wink. I liked the way Dr. Brown tricked Fudge into opening his mouth. So when he was through examining him, I whispered, "Couldn't you make him fudge some false teeth until his grown-up ones come in?" "No, he'll just have to wait," Dr. Brown said. "But it looks like he has fangs," I told him. "You'd better not say that in front of your mother," Dr. Brown said. "I know it. She's not too big on fangs." Dr. Brown thanked me for helping him. My mother made another appointment for Fudge. The nurse kissed my brother goodbye and we left. That wasn't so bad, was it, Peter? My mother said. "It could have been worse," I admitted. We headed for Bloomingdale's, where we get our shoes. There are 5 salesmen in the children's shoe department. 2 of them my mother doesn't like. She thinks they don't measure my feet carefully, that all they care about is selling shoes, even if they don't have the right sizes in stock. The other ones my mother thinks are okay. There's one she likes a lot. His name is Mr. Berman. I like him too, because he's funny. He usually makes believe that the right shoe goes on the left foot, or that Fudge's shoes are really for me. Anyway, when Mr. Berman waits on us, buying shoes is almost fun. Today, Mr. Berman spotted us right away. He always remembers. He always remembers our name. "Well, if it isn't the Hatcher boys," he said. "In the flesh," I told him. Fudge opened his mouth. "Mr. Berman, see, see, all gone." "His teeth," my mother explained. "He knocked out his 2 front teeth Well, congratulations, Mr. Bowman said. That calls for a celebration. He reached into his jacket pocket and pulled out 2 lollipops. He handed one to me and one to Fudge. Ooh, Fudge said, lolly! Mine was root beer flavoured. I hate root beer. But I thanked Mr. Bowman anyway. I'll save it for after lunch, I told him, handing it to my mother. She put it into her purse. Fudge got a lemon lolly. He ripped off the paper and started sucking right away. Ooh, lemon. I like lemon ones too. What flavour do you like, sweetie? Can you tell me what flavoured lolly do you like? Ooh, you like the blackcurrant ones, do you? Are they your favourite? Okie dokie. Well, next time we go and get lollies, Mummy will make sure to get you a blackcurrant one if they're your favourite. Now then, what'll it be, boys? Mr. Bowman asked. My mother answered, brown and white saddles for Fudge and loafers for Peter. Okay, Peter, let's see how those feet have grown. I slipped out of my old shoes and stood up. I stuck my left foot into Mr. Bowman's foot measure. Then he turned it round and I put my right foot in. That's another reason why my mother thinks Mr. Bowman is good at selling shoes. He measures both feet. Some other salesmen only measure one. My mother says feet can be different sizes, even on the same person, and it's important to make sure the size fits the biggest foot. What colour loafers? What colour loafers, Peter? Mr. Bowman asked. Brown, I said. Same as my old ones. When Mr. Bowman went into the back to look for shoes, my mother noticed the hole in the toe of my sock. Oh, Peter, why didn't you tell me you had a hole in your sock? I didn't know I had one, I said. Oh, I'm so embarrassed. It's my sock, Mum. Why should you be embarrassed? I asked. Well, it looks terrible. I mean, to come to shopping for shoes with a hole in your sock. That's just awful. Can't you hide it a little? Where should I hide it? Try to get the hole in between your toes so it doesn't show, my mother said. I wiggled my sock around, trying to rearrange my hole. My mother sure worries about silly things. Mr. Bowman came out with 2 pairs of loafers. He likes to try different sizes to make sure I'm getting the right one. One pair was much too big. The other pair fit fine. Wear or wrap? Wear or wrap? Mr. Bowman asked my mother. Wrap, please, she said. We'll wear the old ones home. I have never been allowed to wear new shoes home from the store. Don't ask me why, but my mother always has the new pair wrapped up and I can't wear them until the next day. When I was finished, Mr. Bowman untied Fudge's shoes and measured his feet. Brown and white saddle shoes, my mother reminded him. Mr. Bowman went into the back and returned with 2 shoe boxes. But when he opened the first box and Fudge saw the He said, "No." "No what?" my mother asked him. "No shoes," Fudge said. He started kicking his feet. "Don't be silly, Fudgy. You need new shoes." My mother told him, "No, no, no," he hollered. Everybody in the shoe department looked over at us. "Here's the perfect size," Mr. Berman told Fudge, holding up one shoe. "Wait till you see how nice these new shoes will feel." Fudge kicked some more. It was impossible for Mr. Berman to get the shoes on his feet. "No shoes! No, no, no!" My mother grabbed hold of him, but he was wiggling all around. He managed to give Mr. Berman a kick in the face. Lucky for him, Fudge only had on socks. "Now look, Fudge," my mother said. "You must get new shoes. Your old ones are too small. So what kind do you want?" I don't know why my mother bothered to talk to him like he was a regular person. Because when Fudge gets himself into a temper tantrum, he doesn't listen to anything. By that time, he'd thrown himself onto the floor, where he beat his fists against the rug. "What kind do you want, Fudge? Because we're not leaving here until you have new shoes." I figured we'd be there for the rest of the day, or maybe the week. How could my mother have been embarrassed over a little hole in my sock and then act like nothing much was happening when her other son was on the floor yelling and screaming and carrying on? "I'm going to count to 3, my mother told Fudge, "and then I want you to tell me which shoes you want. Ready? 1, 2, 3. Fudge sat up. "Like Peter's," he said. I smiled. I guess the kid really looks up to me. He even wants to wear the same kind of shoes. But everybody knows you can't buy loafers for such a little guy. They don't come in your size. They don't come in your size, Mr. Berman told Fudge. "Yes, yes, yes, like Peter's," Fudge hollered. Mr. Berman looked at his hand, held up his hands, and looked at my mother as if to say, "I give up." But my mother said, "I have an idea." She motioned for me and Mr. Berman to come closer. I had a feeling I wasn't going to like her idea, but I listened anyway. "I think we'll have to play a little joke on Fudge," she said. "What do you mean?" I asked. "Well, suppose Mr. Berman brings out a pair of saddle shoes in your size and—" "Oh, no," I said. "You're not going to get me to wear saddle shoes. Never. Let me finish," my mother said. "Mr. Berman can bring them out and you can try them on, and then Fudge will think that's what you're getting. But when we leave, we'll take the loafers." "That's mean," I said. "You're taking advantage of him. Since when do you worry about that?" my mother asked. "Since now," I told her. "Look, Peter," my mother said, checking her watch. "It's 12 o'clock. I'm starved." "Me too," I said. "Well then, if you ever want to get some lunch, let's try my idea." "Okay, okay," I said. I sat back in my chair while Mr. Berman hurried to the stockroom again. Fudge looked up at me from his position on the floor. "Like Peter's," he said. "Yeah, sure, Fudge," I told him. Mr. Berman came back with a pair of brown and white saddle shoes in my size. I tried them on. Did they look ugly? See Peter's nice saddle shoes? My mother said. Now Fudgy tries on his nice saddle shoes. Fudge let Mr. Berman get him into his new pair of shoes. See, he said. See, like Peter's. He held up a foot. That's right, Fudge, I said. Just like mine. You sure can fool little kids easy. We're all right. We're all right, Mr. Berman asked my mother, while Fudge walked around in his new shoes. Rap, of course, she said. I wondered what my mother would tell Fudge tomorrow when I wore my loon loafers. Oh well, that really wasn't my worry. It was her idea. When Fudge was back in his old shoes and our package was ready, Mr. Berman gave my brother a striped balloon. He offered me one too. I refused. How could he think a person in 4th grade might want a shoe store balloon? That wasn't so terrible, was it, Peter? My mother said as I left the store. It wasn't? I asked. Well, it could have been worse. My mother said. I suppose, I answered. We went to Hamburger Heaven for lunch. We sat in a booth. Fudge tossed his balloon around while my mother ordered for him and then for myself. I ordered my own lunch, a hamburger with everything on it and a chocolate milkshake. Fudge was getting a kiddie special, meaning a hamburger without the roll, mashed potatoes, and a side order of green peas. That sounds quite nice, actually. I love mashed potato. Yum. It would have to be a veggie burger in my case, though, because I'm a vegetarian. When our lunch was served, my mother cut Fudgy's hamburger into tiny pieces, which he shoved into his mouth with his fingers. Then she handed him a spoon and told him to eat his mashed potatoes. But instead of eating them, he smeared them on the wool. See, he said, I thought you told me you wouldn't behave like that anymore, I said to my mother. Fudgy, that's naughty. You stop that right now, my mother said. But Fudge sang, eat it or wear it. And he dumped the whole dish of peas over his head. I laughed. I couldn't help it. He looked so silly with the peas forming from his hair. And when I eat and laugh at the same time, I choke. So I choked on my pickle, and my mother had to whack me on the back, which gave Fudge another chance to spread mashed potatoes on the wall. That's when the waitress asked my mother, did we want anything else? No, thank you, my mother said. We have more than enough now. She wiped the wall with her napkin and told Fudge he was very, very naughty. Not me, Fudge said. Not me. Yes, you, my mother told him. Why can't you eat like Peter? See how nice Peter is? Fudge didn't say anything. He just stuck his fork into his balloon. It popped and he screamed, all gone! One more, Blume, more! Shut up! I told him, can't you ever act human? That's enough, Peter. my mother said. She should have slugged him. That would teach that brother of mine how to behave in hamburger heaven. We took a cab home. Fudge fell asleep on the way. He had his fingers in his mouth and made his slurping noise. My mother whispered to me, "Our day wasn't that bad, was it, Peter?" I didn't answer. I just looked out of the taxi window and decided that I would never spend a day with Farley Drexel Hatcher again. Oh dear. Oh my goodness me. Fudge was being a bit of a monkey there, wasn't he? You wouldn't spread mashed potato over the wall, would you, my darling? No, you wouldn't, because you're a good girl. It's probably more likely to be Mummy that gets herself in a mess when eating, because Mummy is very, very clumsy and tends to drop things a lot, doesn't she? Mm. Mm. One day, you and me might go out for a burger one weekend. There's a little cafe near us, an American faux diner type thing that apparently does really good veggie burgers. So I might treat myself one of these days. We'll see. Right, we're gonna have another story from this collection because I love this collection so much. It's one of my favourite collections of stories. This story is called The TV Star. Aunt Linda is my mother's cousin. She lives in Boston. Last week she had a baby girl. So now I have a new cousin. My mother decided to fly to Boston to see Aunt Linda and the new baby. "I'll only be gone for the weekend," my mother said. I was sitting on her bed watching her pack. "I know," I said. "Daddy will take care of you and Fudge." "I know," I said again. "Are you sure you'll be all right?" she asked me. "Sure, why not?" "Will you help Daddy with Fudge?" "Sure, Mum, don't worry." "I'm not worrying. It's just that Daddy is so, well, you know, he doesn't know much about taking care of children." And she closed her suitcase. "We'll be fine, Mum," I said. I was really looking forward to the weekend. My father doesn't care about keeping things neat. He never examines me to see if I'm clean. And he lets me stay up late at night. On Friday morning, all four of us rode down in the elevator to say goodbye to my mother. Henry looked at the suitcase. "You going away, Mrs. Hatcher?" he asked. Mr. Hatcher, he asked. My mother answered, "No, I am, Henry. My sister just had her first baby. I'm flying to Boston for the weekend to help out." "New baby," Fudge said. "Baby, baby, baby." Nobody paid any attention to him. Sometimes my brother just talks to hear the sound of his own voice. "Have a nice visit, Mrs. Hatcher. Have a nice visit, Mrs. Hatcher," Henry told my mother when we reached the lobby. "Thank you, Henry," my mother said. "Keep an eye on my family for me." "Will do, Mrs. Hatcher," Henry said, giving my father a wink. Outside, my father hailed a taxi. He put the suitcase in first, then held the door for my mother. When she was settled in the cab, my father said, "Don't worry about us. We'll be just fine." Just fine, Mummy," I yelled. "Bye, Mum, see you Sunday," I said. My mother blew us kisses. Then her cab drove away. My father sighed while Fudge jumped up and down, calling, "Bye, Mummy, bye, bye, bye." I had no school that day. The teachers were at a special meeting, so my father said he'd take me and Fudge to the office with him. My father's office is in a huge building made of almost all glass. It's a really busy place. You never see people just sitting quietly at desks. Everyone's always rushing around. A person could get lost in there. My father has a private office and his own secretary. Her name is Janet, and she's very pretty. I especially like her hair. It's thick and black. She has the longest eyelashes I've ever seen. Once I heard my mother say, "Janet must have to get up at the crack of dawn to put on her face." My father just laughed when my mother said it. Janet's seen me before, but this was her first time meeting with Fudge. I was glad his hair was finally growing back. I explained right off about his teeth. "He'll look a lot better when he's older," I said. "He knocks out his front tooth, but when he's 6 or 7, he'll get new ones." "See?" Fudge said, opening his mouth. "All gone." My father said, "Janet, the boys are going to be here for the morning. Can you amuse them while I clear up some work?" "Certainly, certainly, Mr. Hatcher," Janet said. "You go ahead into your office and I'll take the boys on the tour and the rest of the agency." As soon as my father went into his private office, Janet took out her handbag. She reached in and came up with a hairbrush, some lipstick, and a bag of crackers. "Want some?" she asked me and Fudge. "Okay," I said, taking a handful. Fudge did the same. The crackers were shaped like little goldfish. I nibbled while Janet fixed herself up. We don't really have goldfish crackers in the UK. So when I read this story as a child, I imagined a sort of equivalent thing that we have in the UK called mini cheddars, which are like little round cracker biscuits, about the size of a penny, and they're cheese flavoured. They're absolutely delicious. I haven't had them in years. I'm making myself hungry now. But anyway, I nibbled while Janet fixed herself up. She had a big folding mirror in her desk drawer. She set it on top of her desk and went to work on herself. She looked when she was finished. She looked exactly the same as when we came in. But I guess she didn't think so because she said, "That's much better." Then she put all her stuff away and took me by one hand and Fudge by the other. We walked down a long hall, through a doorway, into another section of the agency. We came to a room where there were a bunch of kids with mothers. I guess there were at least 50 of them. Most of the kids were kind of small, like Fudge. Some were crying. "Is this a nursery school or what?" I asked Janet. She laughed. They're here to try out for the new Toddle Bike commercial." "You mean they all want to be the kid who rides the toddle bike on TV?" "Yes, at least their mothers want them to be picked." Janet said, "But we can only use one." "You mean only one out of all these kids is going to be picked?" "That's right," Janet said. "Who picks him?" I asked. "Your father and Mr. Denberg are doing it. But of course Mr. Vincent, the president of the Toddle Bike Company, has to approve." Just then a door opened and a secretary came out. "Next!" she called to the waiting kids. "Ma Murray's next!" Her mother said, "Oh, no, he's not." Her mother called, "Sally's next." "Ladies, please, you'll all have a turn," the secretary said. Murray got to be next. He was a little red-headed kid. He wasn't in the room for 2 minutes when the door opened and a big man with a cigar in his mouth came out. "No, no, no," he shouted. "He's not the type at all." Murray was crying. His mother yelled at the big man. "What do you know, anyway? You wouldn't know a treasure if you found one." She shook her fist at him. Janet whispered to me, "That's Mr. Vincent, the president of Toddle Bike." Mr. Vincent walked to the centre of the room. He looked around at all the kids. When he looked over at us, he pointed and called, "There he is! That's the kid I want." I thought he meant me. I got excited. I could just see myself on TV riding the toddle bike. All my friends would turn in their seats and say, "Hey, look, there's Peter." While I was thinking about what fun it would be, Mr. Vincent came over to us and grabbed Fudge. He lifted him up. "Perfect!" he cried. "He's perfect!" The mothers who were waiting packed up their kids and left right away. Mr. Vincent took off with Fudge in his arms. Janet chased him. She called, "But, Mr. Vincent, you don't understand." I ran after Janet. Mr. Vincent carried Fudge into the other room. He announced, "I've found him myself! The perfect kid to ride the toddle bike in my commercial." Mr. Vincent put Fudge down and took the cigar out of his mouth. There were 2 other men in the room. One of them was Mr. Dernberg. The other one was my father. "Hi, Daddy!" Fudge said. "George," my father told Mr. Vincent, "this is my son. He's no actor or model. He can't make your Toddlebite commercial. He doesn't have to be an actor or a model. He's perfect the way he is, Mr. Vincent insisted. Now look, George, we want to make the best possible commercial for your company, but Fudge can't be the boy to ride the Toddlebike. Now you listen, Hatcher. Mr. Vincent raised his voice. I wondered why he called my father Hatcher, just like Mr. Yarby did. Mr. Vincent pointed to Fudge. Either that kid rides my Toddlebike, or I take my account to another advertising agency. It's that simple. My father looked at Mr. Dernberg. It's your decision, Warren, Mr. Dernberg told my father. I don't want to be the one to tell you what to do. My father picked up Fudge and held him on his lap. Would you like to ride the Toddlebike, Fudge? It's just like the one you had at home. Why are you asking him? I said. What does he know about making commercials? My father acted like he'd forgotten I was even around. I'm thinking, Peter, he said. Please be quiet. Well, Hatcher, Mr. Vincent said, what'll it be? This kid of yours? Or do I move to another agency? I remembered how my father lost the Juicio account because of Fudge. Now maybe he'd lose this one too, and I don't think he can afford that. Finally, my father said, all right, George, you can use him on one condition, though. What's that, Hatcher? Mr. Vincent said. The commercial has to be made this afternoon. After today, my son Fudge won't be available. That's fine with me, Mr. Vincent said. Is he going to get paid? Asked my father. I'll worry about that, Peter, my father said. That probably meant yes. He'd be paid and have lots of money in the bank. I'd have nothing. And someday I'd have to balk him. No, wait a minute, never. I'll never borrow money from Fudge. I'll starve first. Can I at least watch when you make the commercial? I asked. Certainly, my father said. You can watch the whole thing. I turned to Mr. Denberg. Will Fudge be famous? I asked. No, not famous, but a lot of people will think he looks familiar, Mr. Denberg said. I turned to Mr. Vincent. Do you know he has no front top teeth? That's part of his charm, Mr. Vincent said. And he cut off all his hair 2 months ago. Well, he looks fine now, Mr. Vincent said. And he can't even talk in long sentences yet, I told everyone in the room. He doesn't have to say a word, Mr. Vincent told me. I couldn't think of any other reason why Mr. Vincent shouldn't use Fudge in his Toddlebite commercial. It was settled. Soon Fudge would be a famous television star, and I would be plain old Peter Hatcher, 4th grade nothing. Let's begin right after lunch, Mr. Denberg said. We should get it filmed in about 2 hours. While my father and Mr. Denberg worked out all the arrangements, I asked Janet where the men's room was. She walked me to it. I told her thank you and that she didn't have to wait. I'd find my own way back. When I was safely inside, I looked at myself in the mirror. I wish Fudge had never been born, I thought. Everything good always happens to him. If he had to be born, I wish he could be 9 or 10 like me. Then Mr. Vincent wouldn't want him to be the one who to ride his Toddlebike in the commercial. Janet sent down to the coffee shop for some sandwiches and drinks. After we ate, we all walked to another section of the agency where the cameras were set up. A make-believe street scene was the background. The toddle bike was shiny red. My father told Fudge all he had to do was ride it around. Fudge liked that. He zoomed all over the place. Vroom, 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 he called. My father, Mr. Vincent, and Janet sat on folding chairs and watched the action. I sat on the floor at my father's side. Mr. Denberg was the director. He said, "Okay, Fudge, we're ready to begin now. You ride the tunnel bike when I tell you, and I'll take a picture of you doing it. All right?" "No," Fudge said. "What's he mean, Hatcher?" Mr. Vincent asked. Why did he say no?" My father groaned. "Look, George, using Fudge was your idea, not mine." Mr. Denberg tried it again. "Okay, Fudge, this is it." The cameraman said, "Start riding this way. Ready, set, go." Fudge sat on the tunnel bike, but he wouldn't pedal. "Come on, kid, let's go," the cameraman called. "No, don't want to," Fudge answered. "What's wrong with this kid, Mr. Hatcher?" the cameraman asked. "Fudge," my father said, "do what the nice man tells you to." "No, don't have to." Janet whispered to my father, "How about some cookies, Mr. Hatcher?" "Good idea, Janet," my father told her. "I have some right here," she said, patting her handbag. "Shall I give them to him?" "One at a time," my father said. Janet walked across the room to Fudge. He was still sitting on the toddle bike. "If you do what the nice man says, you can have a cookie," Janet told him. "Show me," Fudge said. Janet held up a box of cookies. She was really well prepared, I thought. She must eat all day long. What with the crackers shaped like goldfish, and a whole box of cookies too. I wonder what else she had in that handbag. "Give me," Fudge said. Janet held up one cookie. Fudge reached for it, but she didn't let him get it. "If you do what the nice man says, you can have a cookie. Maybe even 2 or 3 cookies." "First cookie," Fudge said. "First do what the nice man says." Janet told him. "No, first cookie." "Give him one, Janet," Mr. Denver called. "We haven't got all day to fool around." Janet gave Fudge one cookie. He ate it up. "Okay, kid, all ready now?" The cameraman said. "You ride over to me." Fudge didn't do it. Mr. Vincent was losing his patience. "Hatcher," he hollered, "you get that son of yours to ride my toddle bike, or I'm taking my whole account away from you and your agency. Must I remind you, George, using Fudge was your idea, not mine," my father said. "Forget about whose idea it was, Hatcher. He's your kid. You better get through to him now." "I have an idea," my father said. He walked over to a corner of the room and beckoned to the others. Mr. Denberg and Mr. Vincent gathered around him, along with the cameraman and Janet. They looked like a bunch of football players huddled together, talking about the next play. Soon my father called me. "Peter, would you join us, please?" "Sure, Dad," I said. "What is it?" Peter, we want you to ride the toddle bike for us to show Fudge how it's done. But he already knows how to ride, I said. Didn't you see him zooming around? He won't do it for the camera, though, my father said. So we need your help. Will I be in the commercial too? I asked. Well, the toddle bike is really for very young. Well, the toddle bike is really for very young children, Mr. Denberg said. Otherwise, we'd have you do it in a minute. I got the message. It was like buying the shoes at Dr. Brown's office. They were going to use me to get Fudge to do what they wanted him to do. I wondered how anybody would ever manage my brother without my help. I walked over to Fudge and told him I was going to ride the toddle bike. Get off, I said. Fudge held onto the bike. No, mine. It's not yours, my father told him. But Fudge wouldn't use for anything. He closed his eyes and screamed. Can he scream loud when he tries? So my father had to pull him off the toddle bike. Fudge kicked and kept screaming, and I bet Mr. Vincent was sorry that he'd ever spotted my brother in the first place. I got on the toddle bike. It was so small my knees practically touched the ground, but I managed to ride it just where the cameraman told me to. See how nice Peter can ride the toddle bike. He said, Here, Peter, come have a cookie. You did that so well you can have 2 or 3 if you want. Fudge stopped screaming. Me, he said. What? My father asked him. Me ride, me. You can't ride as well as Peter can, Mr. Denberg said. Can so, Fudge told him. I don't think so, Mr. Denberg said. You already had a turn. You didn't do what I told you to do. Me! You want to try again? My father asked. Again, Fudge said. Again. Well, I don't know, Mr. Denberg said. Well, Mr. Vincent said, chewing on his cigar. Well, the cameraman said, scratching his head. Please, Fudge begged. I never heard my brother say please before. Mr. Denberg said, OK, we'll give you one more chance. Fudge ran to the toddle bike. I got off and he jumped on. Now? He asked Mr. Denberg. Now, Mr. Denberg said, ride this way, Fudge. Over here, towards me. Fudge did as he was told. Just like Peter, he said. See? Just like Peter. Janet gave me a kiss on my cheek. You saved the day, Peter Hatcher, she said. When she wasn't looking, I wiped my face. Her kiss was too juicy. Poor old Peter, he just gets roped into some things, doesn't he? And Fudge is a bit of a pickle, but we wouldn't have it any other way, would we? I hope you enjoyed that. Joni-Marie and I will see you really soon. Thank you so much for watching, subscribing, commenting. It really makes my day. Thank you so much, everybody. Cheerio! Can you wave, Joni, lovey? Good girl. Bye-bye, everyone.